What if I told you that the ground beneath your feet in some of Europe's biggest cities, the companies behind your favorite luxury brands, and even the course of modern history have been shaped by a handful of families you've probably never heard of? Beyond the famous monarchs, a hidden aristocracy of dukes, counts, and industrialists has been quietly steering things for centuries. They don't wear crowns, but their power is just as real. Their names aren't in the daily headlines, but their influence is woven into the fabric of the continent. These are the old money dynasties of Europe, families whose fortunes were built not in the last decade, but in the soil of ancient lands, the smoke of the Industrial Revolution, and the quiet halls of Europe's first international banks. Their wealth isn't just measured in billions, it's measured in generations. It's a kind of power that lasts, adapting to change while staying anchored in legacy, land, and family lines. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 10 of the wealthiest non-royal dynasties whose ancient fortunes, built on everything from medieval postal routes to huge stretches of city real estate, still hold immense power. Forget the fast money of tech billionaires and lottery winners. This is a story of enduring influence, of wealth so deep it becomes part of the landscape itself, hidden in plain sight. Our countdown starts in the heart of London, with a name that might not ring a bell for most people, but for those in the know, it's the key to some of the most exclusive and valuable real estate on the planet. This is the Grosvenor family, headed by the Duke of Westminster. Their story isn't about conquering armies or political takeovers, but about a single, incredibly lucrative marriage and centuries of smart property management. The family's fortune is estimated at over £10 billion, making the current Duke, Hugh Grosvenor, one of Britain's wealthiest men, far richer than even the monarch. But how did one family come to own the ground under London's most prestigious neighbourhoods? It all started not with a bang, but with a wedding. In 1677, Sir Thomas Grosvenor married a 12-year-old heiress named Mary Davies. Her dowry wasn't gold, but something far more valuable in the long run. A piece of land in Middlesex. At the time, it was mostly swamp and pasture, an unglamorous patch of dirt west of London. But that land would one day become Mayfair and Belgravia, two of the most expensive districts in the world. As London exploded in size over the next 300 years, the Grosvenors didn't just sit back and collect rent. They developed their land with a long-term plan, building magnificent squares and elegant townhouses that attracted the wealthiest members of high society. They weren't just landlords, they were city builders. That strategy is the foundation of a fortune that has survived wars, depressions, and the chaos of modern capitalism. Today, the Grosvenor Group is a global empire, with over 1,500 buildings worldwide, including properties in North America and Asia, and huge urban projects like the Liverpool One shopping centre. The family's assets are managed through a series of trusts, a modern structure built to protect the estate for generations to come. The current head, 34-year-old Hugh Grosvenor, the 7th Duke of Westminster, inherited it all at just 25 after his father's sudden death. Despite his insane wealth, he keeps a remarkably low profile. He studied countryside management at university and even worked for a sustainability firm that recycles coffee grounds. He's also a godfather to Prince George, a nod to the family's close but always discreet ties to the royal family. The Grosvenor story is a masterclass in how one smart move, followed by centuries of patient planning, can create a fortune that literally shapes a city. There's probably no other name so tied to wealth, power, and international finance as Rothschild. For over 200 years, this dynasty has been at the center of European history, financing wars, funding the Industrial Revolution, and creating a banking network the world had never seen before. While they're surrounded by myths and conspiracies, the reality of their influence is no less incredible. The family's story begins in the late 18th century in the cramped Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, Germany. Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a dealer in rare coins, had a brilliant idea. Instead of keeping his business local, he sent his 5 sons to the 5 most important financial hubs of Europe: Frankfurt, Vienna, London, Naples, and Paris. This was the birth of the first truly international bank. Each son set up a bank in his city, creating an unmatched cross-border network. They could move money and information across Europe faster than governments, a huge advantage on a continent constantly at war. Their most famous move came during the Napoleonic Wars. As legend has it, Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the Sun in London, got news of Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo before the British government did. He used that inside information to make a fortune on the stock exchange, cementing the family's financial power. But their influence went way beyond one trade. The Rothschilds financed the British government's purchase of the Suez Canal, a vital link to India. They funded ventures in Africa and the railroads that spread across Europe and Russia. Their name became a seal of approval. If the Rothschilds backed a government loan, it was considered a sure thing. At their peak in the 19th century, they controlled the largest private fortune in modern history. Today, the family's wealth is spread out among many descendants and diversified into sectors like financial services, real estate, energy, and, famously, winemaking, with world-class vineyards like Chateau Mouton Rothschild. The family's combined net worth is notoriously hard to calculate, with credible estimates placing it in the tens or even hundreds of billions. In 2023, the family took their main financial firm, Rothschild & Company, private, tightening their control after decades as a public company. From a Frankfurt ghetto to the palaces of Europe, the Rothschilds didn't just get rich. They invented the blueprint for global finance that still runs our world today. From banking to industry, we now turn to a dynasty so influential, yet so low-key, that they're often called Sweden's silent rulers. For over 160 years, the Wallenberg family has been the quiet engine behind the country's economic success, guiding some of the most famous names in global business. Their motto says it all: esse non videre, to be, not to be seen. The family's power comes from a unique style of active long-term ownership. Through their main investment company, Investor AB, they don't just own shares, they shape the future of Sweden's industrial crown jewels. Their portfolio is a who's who of global industry: Ericsson, the telecom giant; Electrolux, the appliance maker; ABB in power and automation; Saab, the defense and aerospace company; and AstraZeneca, the pharmaceutical titan. At one point in the 1970s, Wallenberg-controlled companies employed 40% of Sweden's industrial workforce and made up 40% of the Stockholm stock market's value. The dynasty was founded in 1856 by André Oscar Wallenberg, who started a bank that would later become the modern giant SEB. From the start, the Wallenbergs saw themselves as more than just bankers. They were nation builders. When companies they'd lent money to started to fail, the bank would often step in, take ownership, and nurse them back to health. This idea of long-term responsible ownership became their signature. Unlike many industrial dynasties, the Wallenbergs have successfully passed the torch through 5 generations, a feat of planning that's almost as impressive as their business skill. The family's influence is now mainly in the hands of Jacob Wallenberg and his cousin Marcus Wallenberg. They maintain control not just through ownership, but through powerful foundations. The largest one, the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, is one of the biggest private research funders in Europe, pouring profits back into Swedish science and innovation. This isn't just charity, it's a strategic investment in the nation's future, ensuring a steady supply of talent and technology for the companies they control. The Wallenberg Empire is a testament to a different kind of capitalism, one that values stability over speculation, long-term growth over short-term profit, and the national interest alongside the family's fortune. They may work behind the scenes, but their impact is felt around the world every time someone uses a smartphone, gets on a plane, or flips a light switch. The House of Thurn and Taxis, a German dynasty with Italian roots, literally connected Europe, and in doing so, created a fortune that has lasted for over 500 years. The family story starts in the 15th century, when the Taxis family of Italy began organizing courier routes for Venice and the Papal States. Their big break came in 1490, when the Holy Roman Emperor hired them to create a postal system to link his vast territories. This became the Thurnon Taxis Post. It was a marvel of logistics, using a network of relay stations with fresh horses to move mail and official messages faster than ever before. For centuries, they held a monopoly on mail delivery across much of Central Europe, becoming essential to emperors, merchants, and generals. This monopoly made them incredibly wealthy and powerful, earning them the rank of Prince of the Holy Roman Empire in 1695. They operated like a state within a state, their yellow and black post horns becoming a symbol of reliable communication. Their dominance only ended in the 19th century, when modern nations rose up and nationalized their postal systems. But the family adapted. They had invested their huge profits wisely, mostly in land. They became one of the largest private landowners in Germany, with vast forests, farms, and real estate. They also branched out into brewing, banking, and industry. The family's modern era has been just as colourful. The late Prince Johannes, known for his wild lifestyle, faced huge debts in the 1980s but started reorganizing the family's assets. When he died in 1990, his 7-year-old son, Albert, inherited the title and fortune, officially becoming the world's youngest billionaire. Today, Prince Albert von Thurnon Taxis, the 12th prince, heads the family empire. Educated in economics and theology, he's a successful businessman and a competitive race car driver. The family fortune, with an estimated value of around $1.6 billion, includes 36,000 hectares of German forest, a private bank, and the family's historic brewery, plus numerous castles and priceless art. The story of Thurnon Taxis is a remarkable example of how a family can build wealth on a service we now take for granted, survive losing their core business, and still remain one of Europe's richest aristocratic houses. In Italy, a nation famous for its passion and design, one family stands above all others as an industrial titan: the Agnellis. Often called the uncrowned kings of Italy, their story is tied to the rise of the automobile and the shaping of Italy's 20th century economy. While their fortune started in industry, not aristocracy, their influence over the last century has given them a status just like nobility. The dynasty began in 1899 when Giovanni Agnelli, a former cavalry officer, co-founded a company that would become a global symbol of Italian engineering, Fiat. Under his leadership, Fiat grew into a massive industrial group, becoming the dominant force in Italian manufacturing. But it was his grandson, Gianni Agnelli, known as l'Avvocato, the lawyer, who turned the family into a global powerhouse of style and influence. Gianni, with his perfect taste and powerful friends, was a global icon from the 1960s until his death in 2003. He wasn't just the head of Fiat, he was an ambassador for Italy itself. Under his leadership, the family's interests grew far beyond cars. Today, the Agnelli dynasty is controlled through its investment company, Exor. The family's current leader is John Elkann, Gianni Agnelli's grandson. Born in New York and educated in Paris and Turin, Elkann took over at a young age and has proven to be a sharp, forward-thinking leader. He was the architect of the historic merger of Fiat Chrysler with France's PSA Group to create Stellantis, one of the world's largest automakers, with 14 brands including Jeep, Ram, Peugeot, and Maserati. Exor's holdings are huge and diverse. Beyond Stellantis, the family has controlling stakes in the iconic sports car maker Ferrari, the construction equipment giant CNH Industrial, and the prestigious media outlet The Economist Group. They also own the Juventus Football Club, one of Italy's most successful soccer teams. John Elkann himself sits on the board of Meta, highlighting the family's reach into the modern digital world. With a personal net worth estimated around $2 billion and control over a sprawling global empire, John Elkann is successfully steering the Agnelli legacy. Their story shows how a family can turn industrial success into a century of economic, cultural, and social dominance. From the factory floor to the highest levels of society, our next family built an empire on one iconic product, a dark, creamy stout that would conquer the world. The Guinness family of Ireland created not just a drink, but a global brand and a dynasty whose influence has flowed through Irish life for over 250 years. The story begins in 1759 with a bold move. Arthur Guinness signed a 9,000-year lease for a rundown brewery at St James's Gate in Dublin for just £45 a year. It's still one of the most famous real estate deals in history. He started brewing a dark beer called porter, which quickly took off because of its rich flavour. The real growth, however, came under his descendants. His grandson, Sir Benjamin Lee Guinness, turned the brewery into an industrial powerhouse and became the richest man in Ireland. He was more than just a brewer, he was a philanthropist who famously paid to restore St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, cementing the family's place in Irish society. His son, Edward Guinness, the first Earl of Iver, took the company public in 1886 in what was then the biggest stock market launch in history, but the family kept a massive stake and full control. He continued the family's tradition of giving back, donating his Dublin home, Iver House, to the Irish state. It's now the Department of Foreign Affairs. He also built the Guinness Trust, which provided clean, safe housing for the poor in London and Dublin, a pioneering act of corporate social responsibility. The Guinness family's influence spread into politics, science, and the arts. They sat in Parliament, funded scientific expeditions, and one member was even married to the famous socialite Diana Mitford. The family name even inspired the Guinness World Records, which started as a marketing idea in the 1950s to settle pub arguments. Today, the brewing empire Arthur Guinness founded is part of the global beverage giant Diageo. While the family is no longer involved in the day-to-day management of the company, their multi-generational fortune is huge and diversified. The aristocratic branch, led by the Earl of Iver, still presides over vast estates. The family's wealth, built on centuries of brewing and smart investments, is still substantial, securing their legacy as one of the most successful and enduring business dynasties in the British Isles. They turned a simple, dark beer into a river of gold that has flowed for centuries. For nearly 1,000 years, one family has stood as a powerhouse in the rugged, crucial borderlands between England and Scotland. The Percy family, led by the Duke of Northumberland, is one of the grandest and oldest examples of landed aristocracy in Britain. Their story is one of medieval knights, political drama, and a fortune built not on stocks but on the very soil of northern England. The Percy family line goes all the way back to William de Percy, a Norman knight who came to England with William the Conqueror in the 11th century. They quickly became the dominant power in the north. Their strategic location made them the wardens of the marches, responsible for defending the English border from Scottish raids. This role gave them immense military and political power. The family's main seat of power is Alnwick Castle, a massive fortress that has been in their hands since 1309. It's the second largest inhabited castle in England, right after Windsor Castle. Over the centuries, Alnwick has been the setting for battles, rebellions, and royal visits. More recently, it gained worldwide fame as a primary filming location for Hogwarts in the Harry Potter films, introducing their ancestral home to a whole new generation. The foundation of the Percy family's wealth is their land. The family business, Northumberland Estates, manages about 100,000 acres, including farms, forests, and other properties. This makes them one of the largest private landowners in the country. Their holdings also include Sion House, a magnificent London home, and other historic castles. The current head of the family is Ralph Percy, the 12th Duke of Northumberland. He took over managing the estates after his older brother passed away in 1995. The Duke has focused on modernising the estate's operations, turning Alnwick Castle and its spectacular modern garden into a major tourist destination that draws hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. The family's fortune is estimated to be over £500 million. This wealth, though, isn't cash in a bank. It's tied up in land, property and art passed down through more than 20 generations. The Percy family's story is a powerful reminder that in the world of old money, the most lasting source of power often lies right under your feet. They aren't just landowners, they're caretakers of a huge piece of English history. Few families can claim a family tree that includes both Britain's greatest wartime leader and the world's most famous princess. The Spencer-Churchill family, the Dukes of Marlborough, are the keepers of a legacy that has profoundly shaped British and world history. Their wealth is captured in one of the grandest stately homes in England, a monument built to celebrate a historic military victory. The family's rise began with John Churchill, a military genius who in the early 18th century led Allied forces to a major victory against the French at the Battle of Blenheim. A grateful Queen Anne rewarded him with the title Duke of Marlborough and gave him the money to build a magnificent palace as a national monument. The result was Blenheim Palace, a masterpiece of English Baroque architecture and the only non-royal country house in England to be called a palace. Blenheim Palace isn't just a home, it's the source of the family's identity and a huge part of their wealth. Now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, this vast 11,500-acre estate has been the family seat for over 300 years. It was here, in 1874, that the family's most famous member, Sir Winston Churchill, was born. Winston, though not in the direct line to inherit the title, was a grandson of the 7th Duke and was deeply connected to Blenheim his whole life. The family name combines two powerful lines. The Spencers, who were wealthy landowners themselves, merged with the Churchills through marriage. This Spencer connection also makes them relatives of Diana, Princess of Wales, whose maiden name was Lady Diana Spencer. Managing such a massive and historic estate is a huge job. The 11th Duke was key in modernising Blenheim, opening it up to the public and starting businesses to fund its immense upkeep. Today, the palace is home to the 12th Duke of Marlborough, Charles James Jamie Spencer Churchill, who inherited the title in 2014. The estate is managed through trusts to ensure it's preserved for future generations. While their exact